Welcome to the Art of Badassery, where I explore what it takes to live life on your own terms, break free from the status quo, and unleash your inner badass. Whether you're a rebel at heart or simply seeking inspiration to step outside your comfort zone, this podcast is for you. I'm your host, Mahara Wayman, and each week I dive into the stories, insights, and strategies of those who have mastered the art of badassery and are living life to the fullest. They smile when no one is looking. Welcome to the Art of Badassery. Meet Tieja MacLaughlin, Toronto's go-to crisis PR consultant who turns chaos into calm. Her story is amazing. From her small town, blue-collar roots to leading high-stakes conversations on the big stage, Tieja's built her success on grit, integrity, and unapologetic pride in where she comes from. No wonder she's on the show today. Tieja, welcome to the Art of Badassery.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh my God, a PR consultant. I have visions of fancy suits and can you give us the lowdown? Like what exactly do you do?
It's not as glamorous as maybe the TV shows make it out to be. I often get references to Scandal, the TV show that was quite popular, or Flack is another one. But as most TV, those are obviously very exaggerated, glamorized. So in short, I'm a crisis, PR consultant, and I'm based out of Toronto. And I mostly manage reputation is the very simple way to say it. So people come to me with a problem, whether or not that may be a scandal, an incident, accident, natural disaster, anything that can cause a company reputational damage. And I help them to get through that.
Okay. How the hell did you find yourself in that? Because it's not one of those normal, I want to be a PR, crisis consultant. How did you get into that role?
It's not. Honestly, this is not even a job that I knew existed when I was going through school. So it's often a common question I get asked is, how did you land here? So I actually used to be on the opposite side of things. I was a reporter for about 10 years early in my career. And I, switched sides, so to speak, and ended up in PR, and then found my niche in dealing with crisis specifically. It's where I have found that I really excel. So in the last few years of my business, what used to be a broader focus on PR has really niched into just crisis scenarios. And it works for me. It doesn't work for everybody, but it works for my personality. And I just love it.
Two things come to mind. First off, what is it about you that really connects to the crisis?
That's a very good question. I think there's many layers to this, right? I think we're all motivated in different ways, in what we do for a living is rooted in many different things. So I would say at its core, I really do enjoy helping people. I like being able to provide, confidence and a sense of calm when somebody else is going through turmoil, to say, like, let's get through this, like, we've got this, let's get through it. And then I think I've never been a 9-to-5 person, ever. So I enjoy periods of deeply intense work, and then periods of strict time off. So the cycles of my work in crisis PR, it's very much, I'll get a call most of the time out of nowhere. You can't predict crisis, or most of them anyways. And so I'll get a call out of nowhere. We do, several weeks of really intense work, long hours. And then I take some time off after that. So lifestyle wise, it also works for me. So the motivation is there to help people, but then also it fits my lifestyle really well.
So good. Curious though, what personality trait are you having to pull on the most when you first connect with the crisis? Because I'm a coach. I'm also a podcaster, but I coach and I meet people when they're at their saddest for the most part. And I'm curious what part of your personality really has to take the reins when you first connect with a client.
I would say I'm very good at getting organized in the midst of chaos, right? I mean, that's just my personality. I like making sense of things and getting a task list, a to-do list, right? Some would say that type A personality. People come to me and I'm sure you experience this in your work as well. In, the 3F state, fight, flight, or freeze, or fawn would be another one as well. So they come to me in this state, and it's my job to understand what state they're in, get them sort of to a place where they can make some more rational decisions, because in our, our fight, flight, or freeze response, we're not making rational decisions. So, when a client comes to me, the first thing I have to do is be that steady, calming voice to get them to just a place where we can talk rationally, strategically make smart decisions. And, without that, we really can't face the crisis head on without just understanding where we're at emotionally first, to be able to make decisions to get through this.
So true. Honestly, it's so similar to what I do with clients. One thing that I've noticed recently in my work is energy is everything. What she is very low or frenetic, frantic, definitely there's a sweet spot for feeling motivated. There's a sweet creativity. There's a sweet spot for acceptance, right? Because I know with some of my work, I've got clients that are not willing to accept what they're seeing.
Absolutely.
Denial. And it's like, okay, wait a second. We can't work towards a goal unless we've got some acceptance for what's actually happened or where you find yourself. So, which is, why we love what we do. I am curious though, a lot of the work that I do with my clients today centers around recognizing our own challenges and our own voices. I refer to it as our inner critic, because our inner critic is always with us. Whether we listen to her or not is up for debate, or, that's everybody's different. But I'm curious, how has your inner critic supported you or not as you develop this amazing business?
I mean, you're absolutely right. It's always there. It's just what we choose to do with it. There's always moments of self-doubt. But the more I grow in my business, and the more walks of life I'm exposed to, the more, these corporate people that I work with who, I initially walk in completely intimidated, and you realize that everyone's kind of in the same boat as you are. Everybody has moments of doubt. And again, it's just what you choose to do with it. So you can let that doubt cripple you and go nowhere, or you build up your muscle memory. You just continue to do it time and time again, to the point where you're no longer faking it. You are it, and seeing these feelings mirrored in other people who I look up to or admire, it just really makes you realize that we're all going through it. It's really just deal with it and move forward.
A great observation. We are all one. Like, we really are. What I was curious though about what you said, is this: would you say that your personal growth is reflected in your business growth, or does your business growth reflect, like, which comes first?
The chicken or the egg question. I would say my growth is reflected in the business. It's more difficult for me to recognize my own self-growth, because I am a perfectionist, and because I do want more and better, and I'm always looking towards the next goal. So it's hard to stop and recognize the growth that I've made as an individual. But then when I see the growth my business has made, it's along the same trajectory as my personal growth. So it's very much reflective of that. And it's great to be able to have that as something to showcase my own personal growth when I can't see it on my own.
So cool. I would love to know, and I suspect our listeners would love to know too, is, can you give us some examples of times in your business when you were like, what the actual fuck? Like, seriously, I'm curious if that's ever happened to you.
All the time. All the time. I would say, because each situation that I'm brought into, and I unfortunately can't go into too much detail, because I do really, honor discretion for my clients, because we are dealing with some interesting situations. But everyone is unique. There's no two crises that are really the same. They can have similar brushstrokes in terms of what's happening, but each one is so unique because the people at the heart of it are so unique. So people will come to you, and just when you think you've seen it all, there really is something new. And it gives me an opportunity to be challenged in different ways. It gives me an opportunity to connect with people that I may not have otherwise connected with in my regular life. I just see so much, and it gives me an opportunity to expand my mind as well. But in terms of that, just I guess like shock factor, it's actually interesting though, because the shock factor sort of has worn over time, right? I think initially, you're kind of like, wow, this happened and this happened. But then as you continue to see more and more unique things, what I consider a crisis now, as opposed to 8 years ago when I started this, has radically changed. So someone may come to me and they think that it is the end of the world. They'll never work again. This is the end of their career and the end of their life. And having now seen so many different crises, I can confidently say to them that this isn't the end. What is the worst to you isn't the worst to somebody else. And I don't want to minimize what you're going through because it's valid, but I can let you know that other people have, either experienced something similar or worse and have been able to come through it.
But what's the biggest thing that you've learned about yourself?
Ooh, that's a great reflective question. I would say that I've always known that I'm resilient, but I think in business, self-employment, you're just constantly faced with that every day. There's no one else to support you. You're supporting yourself. It really is all on your shoulders. So the sense of resilience to, how am I paying my bills this month? How am I putting food on the table? Like that it's on me. Like there's nobody else. So I'm really proud of that sense of resilience, which I think is a reflection of how and where I was raised. And without that, there is no business. It is a constant grind every day, which I'm sure you experience as well. And it does require a lot of grit, a lot of resilience.
So just a reminder, folks, this is called the art of badassery. Yes, it's pretty safe to say that badasses are typically very resilient. They're also very curious. So take us back to when you first, let's say, left school to get into and chose to be a reporter. Was there anything there that sort of was what's the word I'm looking for? Did you get an inkling that the reporting was fine, but it wasn't quite right what you wanted? I'm just curious.
Well, speaking of curiosity, I think reporting does require a lot of curiosity about people's story and a deep interest in learning about just human beings. I love human interest stories. Just like, who are you at the heart? Like, what is this story? That's what I really admire. Less, investigative reporting has its place and it's very important, and other, areas of journalism are very important. But for me, it's the human interest story. And that is absolutely transferable to what I do now. Because when you come to me with a problem, it's often the symptom of something that's underneath. So I have to better peel the onions back to better understand what's at the heart of this. And that's not unlike journalism, where you're asking a million questions to get to what is the root problem. Because if you hire me just to fix this, most of the time, symptom of a deeper problem, you're going to be in a constant cycle of hiring me again. And if I've done my job correctly, you shouldn't need to hire me again, because we've got to the true root of the problem. If you're engulfed in some scandal that's broken out online, well, that's usually a reflection of like your culture, your people, like someone's, your team is not feeling the way that they should feel in a team environment. Something culturally is off. You don't know what you stand for. It's always just, the crisis is always usually reflective of something a bit deeper.
Out of curiosity, ballpark, how is, when you work with somebody, do you work with them for like a month? Typically it only takes 4 to solve the problem, solve the crisis, or is it more like, hello, my friend, this is a 12-month challenge? Just like,
Well, hopefully they don't need to hire me for 12 months. That would be, I don't think I'd be doing my job very well if it was a 12-month engagement. Although to be fair, different businesses are more prone to crises depending on the industry. So they can experience a number of different problems that just kind of come with the territory. But more often than not, dealing with the initial sort of crisis. I mean, the saying is a news cycle is 24 hours. And, in today's day and age, news cycles go even quicker than that with the digital ecosystem. So to answer your question more directly, usually 2 weeks is a good buffer to get over just the initial crisis, when we're in the midst of the crisis, sort of the eye of the storm, if you want to use an analogy. But then afterwards, there's sort of a period where you want to, get back on track. So you've dealt with the crisis, which, 2 weeks typically, if we can just get over that hurdle. And then you want to, maybe tack on another 2 weeks to just, ensure business continuity, things go back to a smooth operations. So I would say most of my engagements are about, 1 to 2 months, depending on the needs of the situation and my client.
so are most of your clients corporate then?
Most, but I found quite a niche in being able to provide services for people that don't necessarily, other crisis communications firms would provide strictly corporate services and have a very high price tag. So while I do a lot of corporate work, I do also work with just the average small business owner, for example, or influencers is another big one, artists, athletes, more individuals who may not necessarily need or want to hire a 5 or 6 figure firm just to get a little bit of help, right? And because everybody's online, right? It's so easy for anybody to come under fire or under scrutiny. And if you're a small business owner and your revenues are, not at a place where you can afford a 6-figure service contract, how do you get the help you need? And that's where I come in. Like, look, if you need an hour on the phone just to talk through, because your options and your steps, because you don't know who else to go to, I can provide that. I can give you a playbook if you want to try and DIY it to save some money, or I can take it off of your plate and do it all myself. But I like being able to offer that option for people who don't necessarily want to go to a bigger firm.
Fair enough. I'm curious though, speaking of social media, because you're right, we're all online. Look, we're doing this online right now. And it is easy to get caught up in, shall we say, worldly distractions, because right, let's be honest, there's so much going on in the world right now. But when it comes to social media, I've got two young children. Well, they're not young, they're adults, but young adults. And I'm curious, can you give us some tips, even for myself as a small business owner, solopreneur that's online all the time? What are some tips that you can share with us? General best practices to not get in the shit.
Well, I'll take a bit of a different approach to this, because I think, trying to stay out of shit is probably going to get you into more shit. Because I think the first thing to acknowledge is the fact that not 100% of people are never going to like what you do. Like, you could be Mother Teresa and somebody's still going to have a problem with it. So I think the first step of all of this is realizing that putting yourself out there online, whatever your business is, not everybody's going to like it. So that's kind of step number one, because when you try to make everybody happy, you make nobody happy. So then from there, it's deciding, who am I and what do I stand for? And just that, it's shocking how difficult it is for most people, most business owners, most executives, to just, like, what are your 5 values? What are your non-negotiables that you don't compromise on, and that you would always advocate for these 5 things? And just getting that determined is a challenge in itself. But then once we have our North Compass, is what I call it, everything else falls into place from there. So then if we put out a piece of content, it should fall within our values that we've defined. And if it does and people don't like it, well, now we can stand behind it because it's what we passionately believe in. If we put up a piece of content that we've just done to appease somebody else or some other group, and then we receive criticism for it, it's difficult to stand behind it then, because we just don't. And any statement that's either apologetic or standing up for it, people can see through something that is, smoke and mirrors. So kind of a unique answer how to stay out of shit is first you got to define who you are and what you stand for, and the rest of it then I think falls into place. But you're never going to appeal to 100% of people, so that's just the reality.
Just to tie this into the topic or the idea that this whole podcast is about, what I'm hearing, Tieja, is guys, be yourself, be authentic.
Yes.
Being badass is all about, it's not about appeasing someone else. It's not about pretending to be someone else. There's power in authenticity. And it's not, this isn't a call to action to be an asshole. It's just a action to be you. And
yes.
So thank you for sharing that. And I love the way that you put it. First, you got to figure out who you are. And in the corporate world, I come from the corporate world. Often who you are is actually somebody else. You just signed on, you just agreed, right? I promise or to be what the company says. And that's why things can be quite challenging. Even as a solopreneur, I have had to consistently remind myself, who am I? What do I stand for? What won't I put up with? What won't I post? What won't I respond to? I mean, I'm online all day, every day. And it is a constant reminder to just, to honor who I am. And full disclosure, I'm still figuring my shit out, right? I'm still
figuring. Oh, we all are, of course.
So one of the other things, and I mentioned to you offline, that I work with women specifically with a trinity, trifecta, let's say, of personalities or parts. I look at the shadow queen, I look at the inner critic, and we look at our divine guide. I'm curious where your intuition has really supported you on your journey, because our divine guide, aka our intuition, is also a really important component to being a badass and to being authentic. So let's tell us a little bit about your intuition and how it's either helped you or hindered you.
I think the way you summarized that was so just bang on, so lovely. The intuition and leaning into it is such a critical part of being a badass, being a business owner, just navigating life. The more I lean into that, just business, personal life, professional life is so much better for it. How does that look practically in my professional life? When you have a new client or prospective client reach out to you and you're discussing, terms of an agreement or how you may be able to help them, you get a gut feeling if it's not a good fit. You get that. And, of course, the price tag that comes with that new client could be the little devil on your shoulder, so to speak, of, okay, well, I also need to support myself, right? But that gut feeling. Years ago, I took a client on that I had a gut feeling that it was off. And my business was very new at the time. And I, quite frankly, I wanted the work. And interestingly enough, while that short-term gain of that contract was helpful, over the long term, the client didn't end up paying their final bill. I ended up losing more in the end, just having to go through like legal avenues to try and collect that money, and just the headache and hassle of having to deal with it. Meanwhile, that could have been avoided just by listening to that intuition. And it's really, the only way I can summarize it is that feeling in your gut that's just something is off. And sometimes there's not even like evidence to reflect that it's off. So there's a bit of at least for me, a bit of I have to work through whether or not those feelings are legitimate. But it's always a gut feeling. And that's one client that I have regretted taking. Fortunately, it hasn't happened since, because you learn quite quickly after that to listen to that feeling.
Thank you for sharing that. And a really good point, it comes up a lot with my clients is it my intuition or is it just my fear?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Say is your fear, your inner critic, is typically very loud. You can't handle this client, right?
Mm-hmm.
For versus our gut tends to be more subtle and more quiet, right? It's just a thing. It's just a thing. So if you're ever wondering, is this intuition or just my fear? How loud is it? Are you actually hearing a voice in your head saying, don't take this client because you're not good enough? Or is it just don't go there?
And thank you for summarizing that. That is so well said. And I've learned something new from this as well. The way you've summarized that fear versus intuition, and you're right. One is always louder. You're absolutely right about that.
And here's the thing. Sometimes the fear has good reason, but I find that it really helps to understand what part of us is speaking out and why, because that's where the lesson comes, right? That's where the opportunity for growth. So anyway, thank you for sharing that. Where are you at right now with your business? You've been in it for over 8 years, I think I heard you say.
Yes.
Is there anything coming up around the corner that you can share with us as far as perhaps just a slight pivot or a broadening of the horizons for your company?
Yeah, I think in the direction that I'm heading is, and I think this is actually an interesting time for a lot of different careers in terms of the integration of artificial intelligence and how that's shaping a lot of work going forward, right? So it has been a reflective period for me of how do I work with these programs? How do they influence my work? Where do I fit in? Fortunately for me, the strategy around crisis communications, I'm known for my strategy. That's, I would say, what people hire me for. I'm good at execution, obviously, but I think more than anything, it's my ideas and my strategy that is really something that I am known for. So fortunately, the robots, will say, don't have the capacity to think in sort of a strategic level. They regurgitate content that's from various sources, public, open sources. So as for where I'm going in the future, I think it's very much leaning into that strategic advisory role. And then the second piece of that is, where Google and SEO has historically been such a key driver for reputation. Now we're looking at, well, how do chatbots, so Chat GPT, for example, how do those influence reputation? So if I'm looking for information on a person or a company, typically the first place I'm going is Google. So that used to be search engine optimization. So if we can control the messaging on those platforms, we can better shape our reputation. Now we have to look at, well, how do I influence the results that are showing up on chatbots? How do I influence the AI summaries on Google? This is a whole new skill set we're leaning here. So that's very much going to be something that's going to take front and center stage in my work going forward. So I'm excited. It's always a new challenge. Every day is a challenge. And this is another one to tackle. So that's kind of where things are headed going forward. I'd like to incorporate some more online service offerings. I do have some online media training, but I'd like to do some more video offerings as well for people that, just need some quick advice and don't necessarily want to invest in a more expensive contract, and they can just, take a course, learn a couple things, and then apply that to their own work.
My God, when you started to share with us the difference between the levels that are going to be required to navigate reputation through chat.
Oh yeah.
My mind just exploded, to be honest, because I use ChatGPT and I use AI in lots of different ways. And of course, now I'm thinking, holy hell, what does that mean for me? Like, what do I go into chat and say, hey, chat GPT, if somebody Googled my name, what would come up? Is that chat or is that Google? Like, is there a difference? And if there's a difference, where would I go, the layman go, to address that?
Yeah. So Google would be a separate sort of ecosystem, and that would be considered SEO. And then chatbots, large language models, LLMs is the abbreviation. That would be ChatGPT. Grok is Twitter or X's chatbot. Meta has a different one. Those people are calling AIO, so artificial intelligence optimization. So essentially what we have to do if we're trying to influence reputation and influence what shows up in those results is we have to reverse engineer, well, what are the data sources of these LLMs? So I'll just continue to use ChatGPT because I think it's the one that most people are familiar with. So where is ChatGPT getting its information from? What are its sources? And then how do we place ourselves within those sources positively to then have a better likelihood of showing up in those results? So we've so far gotten to a place where people and experts have done studies to figure out that something along the lines of like 85% of results in these LLMs are unpaid media sources. So a lot of people will pay to, I don't like this, but some people will pay to play and get featured in like Forbes, for example. You can pay to have a feature on there. Well, that money is now wasted if you're looking to show up positively in a chatbot results. So things like ensuring you have your name domain and on a website. So like I have TiejaMacLaughlin.com. So your name domain and optimizing your website, having all of your social media channels set up because social platforms are very authoritative and rank very high. So those will also funnel into the results, getting featured, organically getting featured in media. So, pitching a story and having a reporter write a story on it. But again, unpaid. When you start paying for it is where the chatbots don't like that. So this is there's a lot of moving pieces. There's not kind of like there's not one simple answer. There's many, it's like a spider web, there's many different pieces that feed in to ultimately give the result. And the idea is for you then to insert yourself in the source data.
Okay, my mind is kind of blown because only 4 short years ago when I got into this business, it was all the rage to pay to be featured, right?
Yeah.
How to get featured, right? And you'd scroll to the bottom, it's like, for $5,000, take my course, learn how to get featured. I'm like, I don't think so. But that's a really big and important, not big, but that's an interesting and important nuance to AI as the average person is learning to navigate it. So thank you for sharing that with us. Just bringing this back to this idea of being a badass, we've talked predominantly about your life as an adult and the work that you do. Is there anything else that you'd like to share that you think would shed a little bit of light or a little bit of depth to our conversation today at all in any area of your life, Tieja?
Something that I've experienced that has influenced my work or career?
You want to share?
Oh, so much. I think there are so many experience. I mean, especially if you go back to like my younger days, I think there's so much we go through personally that is ultimately guides us to where we are. Where to start? There's so many experiences, but I will say that I think those challenging experiences, and I've been through a few, like some, more public than others, some more well-known than others, and others that maybe affected me more deeply that were more private. But I think all of those things create this sense of resilience where at the time that you're going through what you think is the worst moment of your life and you'll never get through it, you do get through it. And having experienced that firsthand is something that I am so honored to be able to then share with my clients, like, you're not in this alone, because I've been through it. And I can name so many other people that have been through it that I've had the privilege of meeting and working with. So for me, like, being that sense of light and direction, and being able to be empathetic and connect on a deeper level with the clients, that is just something that has come with my own lived experience. And without that, I wouldn't be able to do what I do, or I don't think I'd be as good as it as I am. And I think it does really set me apart from some others on the more corporate side that do what I do. I'm not advising out of a textbook. I'm not advising from like an ivory tower and giving you some academic response. Like, I'm giving you the like boots on the ground, been there, done that version. That's just like no bullshit, right? Like, it's like, what you see is what you get. I'm always gonna shoot from the hip and tell it like it is, because I've been there and I've done it. And if I can help you navigate your own, avoid some missteps, avoid some mistakes that I've already been through, then that's, to me, doing a job well done.
I agree wholeheartedly. And again, just to bring it back to this whole idea of being authentic, right? Admit when they either had a tough time, or what they learned from it, or when they screwed up and what they learned from it, right? It's all about being curious and learning as you go and as you grow. So I want to thank you, Tieja, for joining me today and telling us more about this amazing business that you do, because to your point, most of us don't know anything about it. And yes, it sounds very glamorous, but underneath it all, what I really heard, and I want to make sure our audience hears it as well, is that you see people for who they are, and companies for who they are, right? What they represent and where they want to go. And you're just this amazing problem solver, right? That's what you are. You're a problem solver.
That's it.
Interestingly enough, is what I do for a living too. It's just different.
Mm-hmm.
Crisis manager. I'm a coach manager, right? I'm a life manager. But
yes,
thank you so much for sharing. And how can people connect with you? Let's say it out loud. Show notes, guys. So check the show notes. But also, I'd love to hear Tieja say it out loud. Your website.
Yeah. So my website is my first name, last name.com. My name is spelled very uniquely, so I will encourage you to check the show notes. But all my socials and everything is under my name. So just Tieja MacLaughlin. And I do post my thoughts on various, sort of high profile trending scandals or different topics that come up in the news. So I think most people enjoy following for my take on different things that come up in the news.
And there's so much going on in the world these days. I'm sure that there's lots of juicy stuff there. Well, once again, folks, thanks for joining us today on The Art of Badassery. I want to shout out to my guest, Tieja MacLaughlin, who shared her story with us. And if you got any thoughts on this, just, drop us, let us know what you thought. If you got any questions, reach out to either Tieja or myself, and I will see you next time on The Art of Badassery. Take care, everyone.
If this episode lit a fire in your soul or smacked you with some needed truth, don't keep it to yourself. Like, comment, and share it with another badass who's ready to rise. And if you're done second-guessing your intuition and want some clarity that cuts through the noise, book your free intuitive strategy reading with me now. No fluff, I promise, no BS, just soul deep insight to help you move forward with power. The link is in the show notes. Until next time, stay bold, stay brilliant, and for the love of God, stay badass.